welcome to the latest edition of Edison TV. I'm Natalia Davies, an analyst in the industrials team at Edison. We're delighted to be joined today by Shawn Peters, CEO of Information Services Corporation, a leading provider of registry and information management services. So hi, Shawn, great to have you here and thanks for your time.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So to kick off, could you provide an overview of the company and its three divisions, so Registry Operations, Services and Technology Solutions?
Absolutely. So when we IPO'd about 10 years ago, we were a single line of business, which was, as you started out, the Registry Operations business. And that's where we operate and manage the three registries on behalf of the government of Saskatchewan here in the province of Saskatchewan. And those registries are the Land Registry, the Personal Property Registry, and the Corporate Registry. And we were doing that under a 20-year exclusive, original 20-year exclusive agreement. Since that time, we've expanded the business beyond that single line to two other lines. So our second line of business is services, which is a part of the business where we help customers interact with registries. And you'll see a common thread across all of our lines of business, which I'll talk about. But in services, we help accountants, lawyers, financial institutions, car captives, or other financing companies that typically deal with registries and regulatory services. And so we help them interact with that. And then our third line of business is our technology solutions business, where we actually design, build, and implement registry and regulatory systems for jurisdictions around the world. So the common thread across all the businesses is that registry or regulatory services. We either operate and manage them on behalf of jurisdictions, we help customers interact with them, or we build technology solutions for them.
Great. And would you say it's fair to think of ISC as a company with a steady, low growth but cash generative core operation supported by a fast growing services division?
Yeah, it really is. In the last 10 years, or actually really in the last 5 or 7 years, we've doubled the company. So we have that strong, stable, as you said, cash flow generating part of the business, which is our registry operations. So under long-term contract with nice steady growth sort of built into the CPI or the escalators. And then we have this other part of the business, which we've grown to be just as large as our registry operations now, which is the services. That's really where our growth has been, because we're able in that part of the business to actually generate new revenue through additional customers, new products and services, and those types of things, where in the registry operations business, we largely, because we're operating the three registries under this exclusive contract, we have all of the transactions. So it's difficult to generate revenue growth, which is why that's more linked to CPI and those types of things.
And just moving on to M&A, in 2022, ISC completed 3 acquisitions for a total consideration of 55.1 million Canadian dollars. Could you discuss the company's M&A strategy and what sort of multiples you look for regarding acquisitions?
Yeah, so as I said, when we started, we were a single line of business, and we realized pretty quickly that to grow, we would really have to acquire and move out into really our registry, our regulatory ecosystem, and that's what we've done. And typically our M&A strategy has been to look for companies that, first of all, are in our ecosystem. So that's registry or regulatory somehow. Usually companies that have good technology, are maybe a distant second or third in the market so that there's lots of room for organic growth, have a good start on a client base and some good contracts, and then where we can bring some value. We always want to make sure that we're acquiring companies where we can add value, and that's typically companies that are smaller, that have started up, that just need the capital to grow. And so we can bring the capital, we can bring some of the expertise, we can bring some of the shared services that really helps their organic growth. And that's what we've done in services, is acquired those types of companies and then grown them meaningfully over the last 5 or 7 years. And then to the multiple question, typically we've been in the 7 to 9 times multiple. That's been a little more challenging, I think, just pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic, valuations changed a little bit, and so that's been a bit more challenging. We're starting to see them come back to normal, but historically, that's where we've been in.
Great. And so your progressive M&A is strongly bolstered by the recent 20-year extension of the MSA with the Province of Saskatchewan, which provides the company with the exclusive rights to manage and operate the registries on behalf of the province until 2053. Could you talk about the impact of the extension and the associated fee adjustments?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, originally we were operating that under a 20-year agreement in 2013 when we came out, and as you said, expired, and we've recently extended that. We were halfway through that contract, about 10 years through. Thought it was a really great opportunity to lock in that relationship with the government. We'd performed really well over the last 10 years in terms of our service standards and output. We expected the government was happy with that as a customer. And ultimately, we came to an agreement to extend that a further 20 years, as you just said, to 2053. So we now have 30 years of really steady, stable security on that part of the business, which is a strong free cash flow generating part of the business. As part of that agreement, we did make some fee adjustments. So we've always had an escalator built in for our flat fees, which is a Saskatchewan CPI, Consumer Price Index adjustment every year. So that remains. But part of our fee structure includes an ad valorem fee on the land registry transactions in particular. We take a percentage of the value of the transaction as our fee. So previously that was 0.3% of the value of the transaction. And as part of this extension, we negotiated that to 0.4%. And that was really for a couple of reasons. We are looking to make some really meaningful investments into the registry systems for Saskatchewan, particularly now that we've gotten more into the technology solution space. We really wanted to bring that world-class technology back into Saskatchewan, and having a longer-term contract with some fee adjustments is certainly helpful to be able to do that. So that translates into really about $17 million of revenue, an additional $17 million of revenue a year on a pro forma basis, and about 16 million in EBITDA. So a pretty good impact to the business as a result of those fee adjustments.
And just moving on to your financial results, despite prevailing macroeconomic headwinds and a subdued Canadian property market, ISC demonstrated year-on-year top line and adjusted EBITDA growth in Q3 23. Could you provide a summary of the results and how the business has been able to successfully manage the macroeconomic pressures?
Yeah, really our diversification has been key to that. I mean, there's some other factors which we'll talk about, but we've sort of posted quarter after quarter and year after year very strong results, continuing to grow the business. And part of that is related to the diversification. So for sure, here in 2023, with the successive interest rate increases we've seen by the Bank of Canada, we've seen a reduction in certain transactions in the housing market. And that wasn't unexpected. We forecasted that, we guided that way, probably been a little stronger. The interest rate hikes were a little stronger than we expected, and so we've seen transactions impacted. But the good part about the diversification is that other parts of our business are stronger. So there's a minimum number of things that are going through our land and our other registries, so that's good. It stays fairly stable, down a bit, but the other parts of the business then are picking up, which is nice to see. So we're seeing other transactions in the registries. Some of the commercial and agricultural transactions have been stronger. We're seeing in our services business that due diligence and KYC, the know your customer part of the business, is stronger as financial institutions, when lending credit, are doing a little more due diligence given the higher interest rates and people's ability to pay. So it's really the diversification that's helped us even in these macroeconomic conditions. Now, the additional factor, of course, is the fee adjustments that we just talked about. This was the first quarter that we saw those new fees come into play, and so that was partly responsible as well.
And could you discuss outlook for the current Q4 and outline any changes in Saskatchewan real estate activity you're seeing currently? And is the number of property transactions still dampened from hikes in mortgage rates?
Yeah, it is still, we're still seeing that, but Saskatchewan has fared quite a bit better than the rest of Canada. That was the forecast, and it's actually turning out that way. And the Saskatchewan Real Estate Association here is reported that sales are strong. Inventory is a bit of a challenge. So housing inventory is actually more the challenge than the pricing, although the pricing and the interest rates certainly have an impact. So we expect that to continue into Q4. Q4 is typically seasonality, it's our lowest sort of quarter, and we expect that will continue. But we do expect Saskatchewan to continue to remain fairly resilient in the current economy and as that goes forward. And we expect the other parts of our business to continue to be strong.
And just moving on to capital allocation, could you provide an overview of your capital allocation policy? And with regards to a dividend policy, so ISC boasts a current yield of 4.4%, exceeding the average of a group of comparable peers. Is there scope for the current 0.92 Canadian dollar dividend per share to be increased, considering the incremental earnings from the MSA extension?
Yeah, when we IPO'd, we set our dividend at a rate that we thought was sustainable and attractive to investors, and we've managed to maintain that through the last 10 years, and including growing it, which is really part of our objective. Our long-term objective is to grow the dividend over time as the company grows. Our capital allocation over the last number of years has been strongly focused towards growth, and that's evident in what we've just talked about in terms of doubling the size of the company in the last 5 or 7 years, and it remains that way. With the recent extension, we put a bit more debt on our balance sheet. We've historically had really, really low levels of leverage. We now have reasonable leverage, nothing that is sort of concerning to us, and certainly not to our investors or our shareholders. So part of our capital allocation in the short term will probably be towards deleveraging that, getting it back down a little bit to allow us the room to continue to grow the business. Is there a dividend increase? Again, our long-term objective is to grow the dividend as the company grows, and so that would certainly be our expectation as we move forward.
Great, thanks. And to conclude, how would you like to see the market develop over the next year to provide you with optimism for the future direction of the company and its strategy?
We're optimistic even in the current market conditions. What we've just talked about, the diversification of the business means it performs really well in all conditions. Differently, for sure, different parts of the business are stronger, in the current economic conditions. If and as the market turns a bit and we see stability in interest rates and maybe even reductions, that's certainly going to increase transactions in all parts of our business. And then we'll see the land registry, some of the services businesses come up as well. So I think as that starts to move, we're really well positioned to take advantage of that. But in the current economic environment, we're, as we've talked about, doing quite well. We're really excited about the procurement activity that we're seeing in the technology space. We've announced a few wins this year. We expect that's going to continue. And so overall, we're optimistic. We're certainly well positioned as the economy starts to turn around.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shawn, for your time.
Thank you.